Hi everyone, my name is Jun Kim. I am a board gamer who competed at the 2024 World Series of Board Gaming. Today I'm going to be reviewing and doing a commentary on the grand final game of Dune Imperium. I've wanted to do it with the best, so I've waited, and today I'm joined by one of the best Dune players I know, Stu from Boxer Board Gaming. Hi Stu.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Boxer Board Gaming has great contents on both Dune Imperium and Ark Nova. Let's get started with the video. In seat 4, we have Alan Zhao, who was the Azul winner. In reverse order, he gets to pick first in the leader draft. As you can see, we have Kwisatz Haderach in the Imperium row, and his pick was Helena, who can reserve a card from the Imperium row. I'm in seat 3. I won the Castles of Burgundy ring, and I picked Beast because I had the highest win rate with Beast by a distant margin. I was happy with my pick. Moving on to seat 2, Yuka was the Brest Birmingham winner. He picked Baron, another strong leader. James finished the draft with Count Irban, which is another great option. Wanted to hear your opinions, Stu, on the leader draft.
As far as my favorite leaders, I would say the four that are on the board right here are the four that I play the most. I'd say Ilban is my favorite. I definitely like the deck building strategies. I like taking Mentat a lot, not only a cycle through your deck, but just having that last move in the round pretty often. Helena, I like as a fourth position pick. Gives you a lot of flexibility, especially with a bunch of powerful cards on the row. It's a solid choice. The one drawback is really neither of her abilities really generate you resources. Beast is, like you, I've had the most success with Beast. I particularly like the extra starting resources. Just gives you a little bit of a head start to really go for an early Swordmaster, which I like to do pretty often. And then Baron, just generically strong. Having two faction bumps in your back pocket is basically a 1 point lead from the get-go.
I agree with you that these four leaders are what you'd expect to see on the final table, given that Kwisatz Haderach is in the Imperium row. James in seat 1 starts the game with Worth. He visits Worth for 2 Solari. That was his first section, and then Yuka takes water from Steersuit. It was my turn, and my starting hand was a bit awkward. In round 1, I did not have any faction access, and I also didn't have Signet Ring. Not an ideal start, but by going early Ser Melange, you can actually turn it into a sweet round 2 Swordmaster. So that was what I was going for, and I went to Haga Basin for 2 Spice. Alan goes to secure contracts for his 3 Solari. James hires Mentat for his second action. With Count Irban, I try to do what James did, going early Mentat, but I was never successful with it, and I wanted to get your thoughts.
It's an interesting play. It's not something I personally typically do a lot. My preference would be to save that Solari for an early Swordmaster. Particularly looking at his combat with the second and third place giving you 2 Solari, he could have gone for a similar line that you did with Haga Basin, Cell Melange, and then Solari from the combat could give you enough for a sword map. But what he chose to do instead is this Wealth Mentat line, which is kind of similar to what you get from doing an early reveal. And, sometimes there are powerful enough cards that you do want to do an early reveal. It is a bit better than that, though, because even though he's netting 0 resources, getting 2 Solari and spending it immediately, he does get that 1 faction bump, but also getting to draw 2 cards means that whatever he picks up from the Imperium row, he's going to have a good shot of seeing that right away in the second round. I don't think it's possible for Ilban to get Kwisatz in round 1, but certainly Piter, it would be a nice pickup here.
Yuka is going to Great Flat. I went to sell 3 Spice for 8 Solari to set me up for round 2 Swordmaster. Alan went to Secrets for an intrigue. Back to James with his Mentat went to Horror of Oratory for an extra persuasion. Then Yuka picked up Guild Bankers. On my revere, I picked up a Space Traveler. On Alan's revere, he gets Smuggler Stopper. And James's revere to finish off round 1. I think he has enough for Peter here. That was round 1. Yuka takes first, and I get the second place reward here, and I get an intrigue and 2 Solari, which I'm very happy with. For my intrigue, I picked up Guild Authorization. The intrigues that let you bump up on the Alliance tracks, that those are my favorites.
Yeah, I think they're particularly interesting to set up alliance steel plays, getting multiple bumps in one round. Those cards are great for that.
In round two, I started with 8 Solari and Yuka sell Melange for his first action, and now he has enough for Swordmaster as well. So I was forced to go to Swordmaster for my first action. Alan takes 3 Solari from Secure Contract. On James's turn, he plays his ring, grabs Spice from Imperial Basin. He deploys 1 troop. Yuka plays Dagger, goes to Horror Oratory. On my turn, I'm going to steer suit because I was out of water. I was hoping to visit Freeman's bases on this round because with the Swordmaster, you wanna unlock Sea's Tabor as soon as possible because sometimes you left with the third worker and there's no space to visit on the board. So my priority is going to Freeman's spaces twice to unlock that option. Alan goes to fourth space. James takes an intrigue from secrets. Yuka reveres for carrier and shifting allegiance is now in the Imperium role. Back to my turn, visiting Hardy Warriors for the friendship, and I'm shoving in 1 extra troop to play safe.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about early Swordmasters. Now you're going last every round. You get to see how much everyone's committing to combat, and so with a victory point on the line, that's a great easy point for not really a huge amount of troops that you're committing to combat. So that's great value for you.
Alan grabs Guild Administrator, and James just got Shifting Allegiance, which is a great card. We're reserving conflicts here. So I picked up Arrakis Liaison with my 2 Persuasion here.
Liaisons are definitely an improvement over your starting decks. If there isn't a better option in Imperium row, I'll definitely pick up some liaisons, but that 2 persuasion reveal definitely makes it a lot more feasible to pick up Spice Must Flows later in the game. But I generally don't want to pick up more than 2, maybe 3, because then it does start to clog up your deck to see your more powerful cards less often. I think the edge case where you may want to pick up a lot of them is if you pick up Liaikines.
This is round 3. I get to go first. I'm going to 4 space with my Space Trevor, and interesting start for me because in my starting hand, I had Space Trevor, I had 2 convincing arguments, and I also had Arrakis Liaison. So I had enough for Kwisatz right out of the gate if I wanted to done early revere. But I decided not to because Kwisatz wasn't what I was going for in this game. If this was Chom directorship, I think I would have early revered. With Kwisatz, after the first reshuffle, I feel like the value of Kwisatz dropped significantly.
Yeah, that is an interesting decision point. I don't think I would have gone for it either, right? Because you're effectively giving up on 3 actions to put Kwisatz in your deck. And, as you said, if you've already had a reshuffle, how many more times are you going to see Kwisatz? Maybe 3. And so you kind of just get those 3 actions back. Could still be worth it, but I agree with your play here to use your faction access and take a bump here at the very least.
So I was hoping for another faction access with my card draw from Space Trevor here because otherwise I didn't have much to play in that round. But I drew Dune, the Desert Planet. I was down to 7 Persuasion and I was still not thinking about Kwisatz at this point. I knew that James reshuffled Peter. Alan went to Haga Basin, he grabbed some spice, and James goes to Selective Breeding with the Shiner draws. I was guessing he had Peter in his hand at this point. Yuka goes to Secure Contracts. And I don't have cards to play here, so I went to Horror of Oratory. Alan goes to High Cancer. He finishes his engine building and goes straight to Spice Must Flow, which was pretty effective for him. James didn't have enough for Kwisatz, so he's playing his dagger to go to Mentat, and he drew 2 more cards.
Yeah, so at this point he's drawn 4 cards, so you got to think at this point he's got it, but now you're in the position to take it from him.
I was step ahead and I snapped Kwisatz. So lucky for me, and
Yeah, and it is still an early reveal for you because you've only placed 2 agents, but at that point I think it's definitely worth it, especially if you said you didn't have any other good spaces you really wanted to visit.
So at this point I was feeling pretty good about my position. And Alan here grabs Test of Humanity instead of reserved Duncan, which I think was a smart play by him.
Yeah, so I think James was definitely going for Kwisatz there, but his plans just kind of got blown up by you. So I think it's interesting that Worm Riders was flipped. That's a good high persuasion card. That's a nice little consolation prize, but also kind of encourages him to chase after that from an alliance.
Him going to Carthage for intrigue using Peter must have been a plan B.
Yep, very likely so.
Yuka goes Imperial Basin with his carrier James, and he indeed picks up Warm Rider. Yuka's reveal is getting Spy Smugglers. End of round 3. Conflict reserves, and James wins the conflict, setting the board up for round 4.
Yeah, so it's interesting that quite a lot of combat cards being flipped have a victory point on them, which really kind of favors someone who's going to end the game quickly. People who are pushing combats and maybe skipping out on the Swordmaster to try to get some early aggression, which it seems like James might be going for with that last combat win. And as you can see on his board right now, he doesn't really have any Solari banked up, so it's not looking like he's going to get a Swordmaster.
Alan went to Steersuit for his first action, and James uses Shifting Allegiance to move up 2 spaces on the Freeman track, which he needs to activate his Warm Rider. Yuka plays Diplomacy, goes to Worth. I also play Diplomacy and going to Hardy Warriors. Going hard on conflict.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable to go for given, looking at the board, your opponents don't have a whole lot of troops in their garrisons. But I mean, that could change pretty quick with a couple of visits to Carthage and Keen. And with James having Worm Riders out there now, giving him 4 swords on reveal, that can be pretty dangerous. Did you have anything else in your hand that could have provided you more backup to seal that combat?
Because I didn't have conflict intrigues. I was planning on visiting blue spaces on the board to recruit more troops to deploy into conflict if contested by other players. And I had 4 space in my hand. So I had some flexibility. Alan went to selective breeding. He's thinning his deck and drawing cards. He's seated in the high council, which I like to do in my games, but the question is why with Helena? Helena, I personally think is strong with an extra worker because Helena can go to any green or blue spaces, even if it's occupied.
Yeah, I would agree. Some things that Helena could help with this kind of strategy is, getting your choice of cards from the Imperium roll that, helps you with that strategy. If you're going for cycling and drawing, get Spice Must Flow. Also, just unimpeded access to Research Station, if that's what you need on a turn to get a Spice Must Flow, that could be useful as well.
So James used his intrigue to pass his turn, and Yuka used guild bankers to recruit 4 troops. And I'm using my ring to go to Arakin. I'm trying to draw as many cards as I can to cycle through my deck for Kwisatz.
And I see you didn't push the troop in either. Did you feel pretty confident at this point with that 4-1 lead over Allen and then no one else having troops in the conflict yet?
No, I was planning on visiting another conflict space on my next action, so I was saving it. So Alan here takes his first Spice Must Flow. James uses Peter to Carthage.
It's also interesting, Allen getting his Spice Must Flow engine up so early. It's only round 4. Sometimes you got to be worried picking them up too early because they can clog up your deck and make it hard to purchase them later.
And James deploys his 2 troops. Yuka reveals, grabs Imperial Spy, Lady Jessica flips. And here I decide to go to Mentat, another card draw, and mainly to confirm James's Warm Rider, because on his next turn he has to reveal. He does have Warm Rider and grabs Chris Knife. So back to me, and I'm debating between Sis Tabor and Secrets here. Do I use my 4 space to gain another troop and add 2 additional troops to the conflict, or do I go to Secrets for a faction bump instead and I give up on the conflict and go to Secrets for an intrigue? I draw Tiebreaker.
That's an interesting choice. It does give you enough to break the tie in the current combat. You can stand behind going to secrets, taking the faction bump while you can. You know, every faction bump is effectively half a point, and with how many intrigues James has been picking up, you've got to be thinking he's got combat cards in hand. And even if you put in 2 troops, there's 2 ambushes that could tie that, and he's got enough spice for the private armies to pull ahead. And there's a reasonable chance that he's got them.
I think the biggest mistake I made in this round is going to Mentat. That was not necessary because I wasted a dagger and 2 Solari.
Oh yeah, throwing away that dagger hurts. You know, if he has Worm Riders, he's going to tie you. The dagger makes the difference. And then given that tiebreaker, that could have pulled you back in a tie with him.
On my reveal, I picked up Smuggler's Doctor, card that I typically don't go for, but for my quizzes, I was pretty desperate.
I mean, it's a card I like to pick up with how often I pick Ilban, just because it gives you so much cycle through your deck. And I do like visiting fold spaces early to get that quick friendship, because those fold spaces just give you your faction bumps pretty early, which kind of opens up your late game to be more flexible. But yeah, I guess the drawback with Smuggler's Thopter is the timing to get good value out of a orange space visit can be tricky sometimes.
Yeah, I got it only because I had guild authorization in my hand, because I can activate it without going to guild space. James wins the battle. He gains another victory point, and we are now in round 5. And James, with his first action, uses his diplomacy for conspire.
Yep, that's interesting. He probably just wants to stack up a good amount of Solari for a lot of Mentat visits. And then also more troops, more intrigues, just go really aggressive on the combat.
Yuka gets more spice from Imperial Basin. I'm going to Sith Tabor with Arrakis Liaison for the water I need. Alan uses his Test of Humanity.
Yeah, it can be quite annoying. That's not the first time he's visited selective breeding, so he's going to be cycling through a pretty thin deck and seeing that card pretty often, which does make it harder for the rest of the table to buy Spice Must Flows.
He's gearing himself up for Spice Must for every round going forward. So he's starting the time clock here. James goes Mentat with his dagger. Later rounds with Count Irban, you wanna go to Mentat every round if you can.
Yeah, and with that visit to the Emperor space, yeah, he's got the Solari to fuel that for quite a while. I don't expect him to save that up for a Swordmaster at this point.
Yuka goes to secure contracts. Back to me. I'm playing my Kwisatz to go to Hard Warriors, and I gain Freeman Alliance, and I get water for Alliance bonus, and I reshuffle my deck without Kwisatz, which is very unfortunate.
So, what's your thought process on Hardy Warriors? Are you thinking this is a good time to push combat, knowing that James just had his Worm Riders used last round?
With Beast, I like to contest the conflict every round if I could. That would be my default play with Beast.
Yeah, I'm a little bit more passive on the combats. I think just from playing so much Ilban, going with Mentat, I like to try to be the last player to go and see how it shakes out. And often I like to see if there's an opportunity to push in just 1 or 2 to really get a good return on a second or third place reward.
I also wanted to claim that Freeman Alliance this round to make it harder for James to steal it from me. Alan got his water by going to Steersuit, and James early reveals for Lady Jessica. He does go up on Freeman track.
Yeah, that's interesting because from what I just saw in his hand, he had 8 persuasion in it, so he could have taken another move, but I guess he felt that someone else at the table could have snatched up the Jessica before him.
Lady Jessica is one of the most powerful cards in the game.
Yeah, absolutely. That much draw and the trash. Just gonna see Lady Jessica more often.
I use my dagger and go to Horror Oratory. I didn't have anything else to do after using Kwisatz in this round. He didn't have enough for Spice Must Flow, so Air Kinds would be his only option here. Stirga flips, and this was a lucky flip for me because I was sitting on 5 persuasion. So I'm snapping Stirgar.
Yeah, all around good card, does a lot of things. Faction access, water on play, 2 persuasion, decent, but 3 swords also combat effectiveness, just does a little bit of everything. And so round 6 combat flips, and you're right, it's not a victory point, which pretty much we're expecting.
Yuka opens with Carrier, is getting more spice.
Yeah, and so that's something you always got to be thinking of round 6, knowing that round 7 and beyond is when those 2 point combats are coming out. So stockpiling your garrison, stockpiling your spice is often something you'll see players doing.
I went to Table again. Alan went to Research Station. Now he's really drawing cards. James goes to Arakin, deploys 1 troop. Yuka goes to card deck. He deployed 3 troops here. I'm using my intrigue to use my smuggler stopper to draw more cards. Alan uses guild administrator, visits for space. James went to secure contract with his shifting allegiance and uses spice to go up 2 in the Freeman track to steer an alliance from me.
That's the power of shifting allegiances, those alliance deals. And James has got to be feeling good about his combat potential now, because that is a pretty good combo with Worm Riders.
There's 2 things you can do. Do you fight back or you just give up? Typically, I just like to give up on it because gaining back requires more resources and turns.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
I'm going to selective breeding.
So is selective breeding because you're going for Spice Must Flow or digging for Kwisatz or a bit of both?
Drawing cards to cycle through my deck, it was for another Kwisatz appearance.
Yeah, and that's another important thing to track is the management of those reshuffle, right? Because now getting that reshuffle during your turn means that everything you played on this turn you're not gonna see, and it increases your chance of seeing the Kwisatz. Yeah, it looks like he gets the last bump from his Chris
Yeah.
knife. Good choice to not try and fight him for that alliance.
Yuka reveals. So this was a big turn for me. I top decked Kwisatz after reshuffle, and I go back to back selective breeding for a guaranteed Spice Mouse flow here. So I had 20% chance into top decking Kwisatz because I had 5 cards reshuffle, and this was a super lucky draw for me. 8 persuasion for my first Spice Mouse flow.
I do think it is pretty interesting that Yugo would play 3 of them this combat, right? Including one where you have to spend 2 spice. Feels like he almost spent more to win this combat than he actually got his reward.
And now we're into round 7. I started round 7 with my first action. I went to 4 space. I didn't have the right cards to finish the game this round, so I was just setting up for the next round, going up on guild track to claim that guild alliance for another victory point. Alan
Yep.
goes to selective breed and he gets Bene Gesserit alliance.
He's looking pretty solid.
And Yuka does play Highliner. He's catching up on the VP track here.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got a huge lead in this combat and still 4 more troops in garrison. So, he may be eyeing round 8 combat as well.
I went to Arakin for a card draw, shoving 1 troop. I'm hoping to get to 6 spice for a possible Highliner next turn. Hitting Highliner at the right timing, sometimes it doesn't play out the way you want.
Absolutely. That's exactly what knocked me out of the second round. Everyone's sitting on 8 points. I'm the only one that can afford Highliner, but don't draw the access.
Alan went to Haga Basin. James did play his Lady Jessica and went to Secrets. Yuka went to Worth. And I go to Tabor with Stirgar. So my thought here is let's get 2 water with Stirgar and then visit Research Station in the next round for Spice Moss Pro.
Yeah, that's a solid plan. Looking how no one else is going into combat, that limp in of one troop looks like you're gonna get some spice, which would give you enough for Highliner, and then combine that with going to research station. That gives you pretty good odds of drawing the access.
Alan reverse for another Spice Must Flow, and James uses his ring. Yuka plays Dune, the desert planet, and go to Great Flat. I just got two more Hurricane Liaison. James reveres.
I think that's fair for the position you're in, knowing you're going to hit research station next round and you have corner of the market in your hand. Yeah, I think picking up a couple of two persuasion cards will be helpful there.
So James reveres he has enough for Spice Must Flow, and then he uses his intrigue to deploy some troops into the conflict. So he's going for that second place to get 5 spies plus one that he's sitting on right for Highliner next turn, resolving conflict.
Yeah, looking like a very, very tight game now, actually, with Alan and Yuka in the lead. So Alan's been picking up a lot of Spice Must Flows. Were you keeping track of how many he had and if he was trashing them to give you the possibility of picking up the 2 point in game?
So he's been trashing his Spice Must Flow along the way. So I knew that he was already down to 1 at this point. He just went to selective breeding with his third or fourth test of humanity. James uses shifting legions on Manta.
Yeah, I can see from
Yeah.
his hand. So before he went there, he had enough
Yeah.
spice to go to Highliner, but it looks like he didn't have the access.
And Yuka to Karthik, and I have diplomacy going to Highliner. And this worked out perfectly for me because I needed to go to geared space for that alliance. Ellen went to Worth for a victory point, and James went to Arakan, deployed 4 troops. Yuka plays his ring, goes to Sith Tabor. As I planned, I'm going to research station to draw cards. Alan reveres and he's short of 1 persuasion, which is unfortunate for him. James went to Hardy Warriors with his Chris knife, and he does have now 7 troops in the conflict. Yuka reveres. I'm going Smuggler Stopper.
Yeah, so you've got to be feeling pretty good at this point. I mean, you
Yeah.
were calculating getting the win without the combat.
James reveres, and with his Worm Rider, he's at 20 now. Do with my last Christmas action here. I'm going to Hardy Warriors to add 2 more troops, which should bring me up to 22 swords. Now we're down to intrigues. I'm revealing. Got another Spice Must Roll. I'm at 9 points.
So no intrigues from James.
And that is the game. Yeah, that was the grand final game of Dune Imperium 2024 World Series of Board Gaming.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of things just kind of went your way, even though they weren't your primary plans, but it seems you adapted to take advantage, getting just the right draws to pick up Kwisatz, getting the corner of the market, and really hitting up those Spice Must Flows to really just seal your path to victory there.
Yeah, that was it. And base Dune is replaced by Dune Uprising. What was your take on Uprising? Do you think it is an improvement over base Dune?
It's gonna take some adjusting. Although the base mechanics are the same, there's a different way to go about the game. It's certainly more combat focused with the worms can be very powerful. And I do feel the Imperium row cards seem to be a lot more flat and balanced, right? In the base game, there's certain cards that will just sit in the row all day because people view them as really very niche or just generally not very good. You can make a argument for most cards in Uprising to have a good use case. So I think the deck building and the combat is going to be interesting things to change up in the Uprising format.
Word, thanks for joining me today, and see you again in our future videos. Until then, enjoy your games.
Good night.